Okay, so in our previous video, we saw that we had we tried to concatenate a string to an integer, and it gave us an error that we can only concatenate a string to a string. So a way to solve this is to actually try to convert the number into a string using the function str. So str, similar to print, is a keyword. And when it is used with an argument, what it does is that changes whatever the type of the argument is into a string. So what will happen here is that Z will be converted into a string, then concatenated to W string, and the concatenation of a string to a string is just the first string is displayed and then the second string is displayed afterwards. So you can see here that it says your mark is 85, and if you notice here we need a space. So a way to solve that is to concatenate these variables to a string which is a space. And so now there is a space here. So this is the end of our introduction, and now we will start talking about variables. So when we talk about the variables, such as the variables that we just introduced, we need to know a number of things. First of all, variables start with a letter or an underscore, and do not start with a number. Variables can contain from the alphabet the capital of A to Z or the lowercase of A to Z, and also can contain numbers 0 to 9. And also variables are case sensitive, which means that an A capital variable is different than an A small or an A lowercase variable. Okay, so now we will be talking about the declaration of variables and also casting of variables. So there is one way to declare a variable. You can say, similar to what we did here, is declare and assign a value. Or you can write, for example, x, y, z, and place commas between them, and then assign each one a value like this. So what happened here is that 80 was assigned to x, 90 was assigned to y, and 70 was assigned to z. And if you want to assign the same value to a number of variables, you can say w equals u and equals 60. So right now, if you try to print y, you will see that the value of y is 90. And if you try to print the value of w, the value of w is 60. So this is another way where you can do multiple declarations and assignments for variables. Another thing that we can do is also cast. So we're going to try to cast integers. So we're going to say x equals integer 1. So casting an integer gives you back an integer. So if you print x, it will be 1. Another thing that you can do is change a float into an integer, and then if you print x, it will give you only the integer value of that. Or you can cast an integer to a string, and then if you try to print it, it will change the string into an integer. Another thing you can do is to generate a float number. So here we are going to try to change this into float, and we're going to try to float number 1, and then we will print the value, and obviously it changed it from an integer into a value with a decimal point. And then we will try it for 3. And what happened? Oh, this is an integer. So we will do float 3, and then print x. It changed it into a float, and we can also try to do 0.2, and then print x, so we change the string into a float. And we can also try now to change into strings. So what we'll do is we will use the str, and let's try to do 51, the number 51, and then print x. It gives us 51, and we can also try to change floats to str. And then print x. Okay, so now the next thing that we will be talking about is strings. Okay, so now we will be talking about variables being local or global, and in order to explain this part, we would have to explain also functions. So right now what we're going to do is we are going to try to define a function. So functions are okay, so functions can be introduced like this. So the concept of a function is some sort of a processing that takes in an input, does something to the input, and then generates an output. We usually call the input as arguments, and you can have 1 or 2 or many arguments going into the processing, contributing in different ways into the function to give the result output. Okay, so how do we define a function in Python? We use the keyword def, and then we give any name. So it's going to be my function. Okay, then we open and close brackets if we don't have any arguments, and then we use these 2 dots on top of one another. And so now we have this declared. Now we are going to, we have to indent 1 or 2 spaces, but we have to create this indent and remember how many spaces we went, because indentation is very important in Python. So next we will describe a variable.